when I was younger and my kids were younger, and I forced or coerced or persuaded my husband and the kids to live in Kyoto for a year.
I don't know how to do that.
Which was the best thing we ever did.
Over there, there's a vibe.
This is a picture of a wedding. I happened to snap wedding family, but this is not my family. This is more like my family, except my son, who was probably taking the picture. So the kids were 13 and 15, and here we were dressed in traditional samurai clothing. That's not what we usually wore, of course.
Where are you?
I'm on the right.
That's you?
Let's see, I better get the pointer out here. That's me. That's when I was a brunette. And that's my daughter. She was 13, she's now 53. And that's my husband, who died a long time ago, and who was our ticket to living in Japan. Everybody but me was reluctant to go. But afterwards, we all appreciated this absolutely amazing experience. It was the best thing I ever did. So, this little piece of amazing land is this amazing country. And obviously, the Japanese occupied North Korea and part of Manchuria, as you know, and part of Korea, well, all of Korea, actually. So you can see where it is. And also, as you'll learn, it's very mountainous. So they always needed room to expand, and that accounts partly for why they started the Second World War. So Japan is basically divided into these four sections. Hokkaido in the north, and we'll see some pictures from the snow festival there. And then Honshu is the biggest island, with Tokyo and Kyoto. Shikoku is a little tiny island, and then Kyushu is a big island, very tropical. So we have major differences in climate here. And of course, this is where Hiroshima and Nagasaki are. I'm going to talk about the language in a minute, but in Japanese, every syllable is accented the same way. So it's not Hiroshima, it's Hiroshima is the correct pronunciation. So it's a volcanic archipelago, and it has almost 7,000 islands, but those four largest ones are the ones I mentioned. And there it is in the world, it's a little place in the world, tiny place. And so those four islands make up 97% of Japan. Population of 126 million, all crammed into this small space. It's the world's 10th largest country in population. In Tokyo alone, over 9 million people live. In the greater Tokyo area, 35 million people live. So if you get on a subway in Tokyo, especially in the morning, they have pushers that push you into the subway. And at no time do your feet ever touch the ground. And that's even true in Kyoto in the buses. So Japan, since the war, Japan has maintained a unitary constitutional monarchy, still with an emperor, but an elected legislature called the National Diet. No relation to what we do after Christmas. Japan has a very vital, strong economy, the third largest economy in the world after the United States and China. So although Japan has officially renounced its right to declare war, and this is a samurai because the war tradition in Japan is ancient, it does maintain a modern military with the world's 8th largest military budget used for self-defense, which it has good reason to worry about such things, and peacekeeping. Japan is a developed country with a high standard of living and high human development index, which means it uses the potential of its people very well. Its population enjoys the highest life expectancy in the world and the third lowest infant mortality of any country. So if you want to live long, you should be born Japanese. It's an aged society. We're an aging society. Europe is an aging society. Japan is an aged society. So it has the highest proportion of elderly citizens, 30% above 60, and a large percentage, 13% over 75. So there are probably lots of V's there, but actually the tradition is for the children to take care of the adults, but that doesn't really happen. So population aging occurs faster in Japan than any other country. This is a graph of the rapidity of the population aging. But the population will fall by 25 million by 2050 as a result of low fertility and high life expectancy. So they have a real problem there. They have a lot of old people, very few babies born, and almost no immigration. So this is a problem. Old people actually are committing crimes so they can go to jail and get meals and a bed, because many of them are homeless. As you know, Japan suffered the strongest earthquake in its recorded history that triggered the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster, one of the worst disasters in history, which Japan is still getting over. This is a picture of Mount Fuji, Fujiyama, and a beautiful shrine, Torii. No, not Torii. This is a typical scene in Tokyo. Usually your feet touch the ground, but there are mobs of people in Tokyo. Its density is directly above India, but that's just taking the whole country as a whole. But in Tokyo, it's very dense. Land prices in the 6 largest cities in Japan increased 15,000%. 15,000% between 1955 and 1989. So people can't afford to live in Tokyo, or if they live in Tokyo, it's in a little tiny room or a closet or a box. There are hotels that are essentially boxes, that are shelves where you can rent a shelf and sleep there overnight. So a lot of people have very long commutes to places where they can afford to live, and even then, land is extremely expensive. So this is what contributes to small families. They have very high educational level. They have a devotion to raising healthy children. It's a real job for a mother especially to raise a child. They have to have all kinds of after-school education. High achievement levels are demanded. It's very difficult. Plus they have to have skills like playing the violin or flower arrangement or whatever. Women are now joining the labor force more than ever. When I was there, it was, when was it? 50 years ago, whatever it was. And, 30 years ago. And there were very few women in the labor force, and now there are a lot of them. Very small living spaces, which don't contribute to large families. They know about the problems of overpopulation, so they are contributing to lowering the population to the extent that they're going to lower their own population. And the high cost of childcare and education. Even though most education is free, all the extra education that the kids get and childcare is very expensive. And abortion has been available in Japan freely and legally for many, many years. The pill has not been. Japan did not think that the pill was safe for women to use, and so it wasn't available for a long time. But contraception is. So this is the life expectancy at birth, 82 years for women, the highest in the world. And the law is changed so that the population will not decrease so precipitously. Fathers get up to 8 weeks of leave after the birth of a child. Employees with little kids have family allowances. They get overtime on the employee's request, and they're limited to working late at night if they have to take care of their families. So this is my daughter when she was 13. She's now, as I said, 53. You've seen her in my films about India. We went to India together last year. She has 2 children, and we're actually taking a trip to Chile soon. This is just one temple. There are more than 1,600 temples in Kyoto. It was the ancient capital. It's known for its gardens, temples, its shrines, its refinement, its tradition. It has about the same population as San Diego, city of San Diego. The first YouTube I showed was about Kyoto, and we don't have time for me to show the whole thing, but it does show the ancient parts, which are not immediately obvious because it's a big bustling city with a lot of traffic. Japanese food, I showed also while you were coming in, a movie about YouTube about the food, but it's amazing presentations usually, very seasonal, very fresh food. Fish and vegetables used to be central. Now the Japanese love meat, and of course they're dying of heart disease. The amazing thing to us was the variety of restaurants. This is a very fancy restaurant, but we had a noodle restaurant down the street. We had several noodle restaurants. We had fish restaurants. We had fugu restaurants. Fugu is that poisonous fish that a lot of husbands die of every year if their wives don't know how to take the poison out or forget to take the poison out. The fugu restaurants are all certified to take the poison.
Ward ate fugu when he was there.
Oh, I ate fugu too. It's almost tasteless. In fact, I think fugu represents the Japanese aesthetic. It's very, very subtle. The taste is so subtle that you hardly can taste it. It's extremely expensive. And it's sort of like Japanese theater. Well, kabuki's not subtle, but no, it's very subtle theater. A lot of interpersonal relationships between people are very subtle. People in Japan hardly ever say no, but they have different ways of saying no. It's very interesting. And if you go on a bus and everybody has their eyes lowered, of course they're looking at you because you're a foreigner. But you could go there completely naked, nobody would say a word, but they would all have it registered that you're there, but nobody would say anything. So the subtlety of fugu, I think, is symptomatic of the way the whole culture works. This is a YouTube, which I'm going to pass on, and we'll show it if we have time later. Oops, there it is.
Zen Buddhist tea ceremonies
Well, there
in
it
the
is.
16th century, the highly refined style of dining known as kaiseki has evolved to become the ultimate expression of Japanese cuisine.
Okay, I'm going to skip that. The thing about kaiseki is it's a lot of small courses, beautifully presented, highly seasonal. Again, very subtle tastes. The other thing we discovered was the martial arts. I had done some karate before I went to Japan. I didn't do it when I was there. I did a lot of other things. So. But it's so interesting, again, reflecting the Japanese culture, what the ethics, the dojo is where you do martial arts. Courtesy, cleanliness, and diligence. Arlene mentioned to me that the country is so clean that you can eat off the street. Cleanliness is a big thing. If you go into the bath, the Japanese bath, the women, you wash before you go into the bath, you wash. And women actually shave the hair off their forehead. Cleanliness, and that's not even cleanliness, but very big thing. Diligence, courtesy, that's what you see in Japan. It's not always what you see because we know that the Japanese occupation of the countries where they were was brutal. Every country, Korea, Manchuria, brutal occupation. But interpersonally, people are very nice, very gentle, extremely polite. This is what's important in a dojo. Purify your mind, cultivating the power of perseverance. This is a Japanese character, so characteristic. By strengthening your body and overcoming the difficulties that arise during training. Don't give up, just overcome. The dojo is a place where courage is fostered and superior human nature is bred through the ecstasy of sweating and hard work. It is a sacred place where the human spirit is polished. There's so much bowing and so much respect for the sensei, the teacher. It's really amazing. And my karate, of course, was in the United States, but even there was bowing, there was respect, there was reverence almost. Seniors, not us, but seniors in karate and black belts are well aware of these facts. Therefore, beginners are requested to help make the dojo a sacred place by keeping in the mind the above precepts and observing the following. And then there's a bunch of them. Again, cleanliness starts out. We found that there were festivals, especially in Kyoto and around Kyoto, almost every weekend. And actually, you could go to a hotel and get a list of where the festivals were and which festivals they are. Arlene, in her book about her visit to Japan, has a Festival of the Aged in Tokyo. I don't think we saw that one, but I sort of ran out of what the names of the festivals were. They were all different, and they're based on the Shinto religion. This is the soul of dead insects. And they have lit candles, and they're going through the graveyard, praying for the souls of dead insects. There's a festival. You know, when you do Japanese calligraphy, or when you write in Japanese, it's with a brush. And once a year you throw away your brushes, and there's a festival for the throwing away of brushes. Festival for everything. It's very Shinto, because in Shinto everything has a spirituality. Same festival. And there's a tremendous reverence for nature. Nature, at least ostensibly, nature is cultivated and cherished, even though you hardly see any in a place like Tokyo. It's also very trashed. As I was saying to somebody in Kyoto, we live near Mount Hiei, and on the top, which is a sacred mountain, and on the top, which is very sacred, are beer cans and used condoms and all kinds of things. So it's a very paradoxical country, but what I'm telling you is sort of the basics of what they treasure. Less than 12% of Japan is arable land. This is remarkable. This population lives on only 12% of this land that they have, which is not very much to begin with. They have very few natural resources except water and their people. There are many catastrophes. Tsunamis, typhoons, volcanoes, earthquakes. So no natural resources, but many natural catastrophes. And most of the country is mountainous. This is a famous children's figure. So I'm just showing you how mountainous it is. There are cable cars all over the place to get from one place to another, and also steep steps. The Japanese language is very difficult. It's not like Chinese, it's not tonal, so that's good. And if you get an English translation, then it is like it's pronounced, and every syllable is pronounced the same emphasis. So it's not sake that we drink, it's sake. It's not karate, it's karate. So they have one written language for foreign words and one written language for Japanese words, and then they also use kanji, the Chinese language, of ideographs. So my children didn't go to a regular Japanese school because at age 13 and 15, they would have had to know 1,000 kanji characters, but they did learn hiragana and katakana. I went to school to learn spoken Japanese, but I was completely illiterate. I couldn't read anything. So I didn't know if I was going into a ladies' room or a dry cleaner's. But the interesting thing about some of these pictographs is that they sort of look like the thing that they're depicting. So if you got used to seeing the ladies' room, it looked like a woman with her legs crossed. So I got that, but the rest of it, I had no idea. This is the kanji characters, so 3 alphabets. Kanji, which is Chinese essentially. Hiragana. Romaji, which is the English translation and the meaning of it. So that's the counting. So when you see Ichiban, that means number one, whatever, sake or meat or whatever. Who's that? That's not part of my script. This is a torii, which is usually in a Shinto shrine. Marks the transition from the profane to the sacred. Everything is symbolic in Japan. Here's some women and pseudo women. These are Mako, the junior geisha, and they wear these very elaborate obis. They always look gorgeous. They have their hair done like this, and they ride in carriages, and especially in Kyoto. Women in Tokyo wear pretty wild and interesting fashions. Not so much in Kyoto, but Tokyo. And cross-dressing is not uncommon. And of course, in Kabuki and No theater, all the theaters, men play women's parts. So for men to cross-dress is not unusual at all. Weddings are very elaborate. Under her white garment is a red garment, another garment. She can hardly move. Her obi weighs about 20 pounds, and her headdress is very heavy. Forget going to the bathroom on your wedding day. It's not possible. So this is very interesting. When I was there, this was not true. It's true now. A growing number of young women prefer to stay unmarried in Japan. A development often viewed as a rebellion against their traditional image of women's roles as wife and mother. A very hard role. The men come home drunk at midnight. They want their shoes taken off. They want to be fed. They want to be put to bed. And especially if you have a son, it's a lot of work to raise a son with all the graces that that kid needs to survive. So here, 54% of Japanese women in their 20s were still single. That was unheard of when I was there. And only 30% in 1985, which is more like the year I was there, the year that was. A woman's kimono may easily exceed $10,000. The silk. Did anybody see the kimono exhibit at the San Diego Museum of Art and at the Timken a few years ago? Nancy and I saw it together, yeah. The kimonos were works of art is just a cliche to describe them. They were absolutely amazing. And some of these kimonos are like that. They're all hand-painted, hand-embroidered, beautiful silk, heavy silk. The kimono, the undergarments, which is a whole other industry. The obi, this is a particularly elaborate obi. The socks, the shoes, the whole outfit could cost up to $20,000. Not necessarily. I mean, there are pseudo silks, rayon kimonos. My daughter had one, I had one. And then there's one used kimono sale at the Toji Shrine one Saturday a month. So all the foreigners rush to get these beautiful used kimonos that a Japanese woman wouldn't wear because they're too old. I mean, kimonos. Japanese gardens, a whole other art form, are traditional. They usually characterize miniature landscapes. So the gardens of the emperors and others were designed for recreation and aesthetic pleasure, while the gardens of Buddhist temples were designed for contemplation and meditation. I hope you've all been to the Japanese gardens in Balboa Park. We are very lucky to have such a treasure in our own backyard. And they're so varied, and they look like this one looks casual, but it's not casual at all. It's very carefully planned and tended. I don't know what happened to these guys, but they lost their head. Japanese architecture is a whole other thing, and of course, Japanese architecture, in its amazing simplicity, not always simple, but it is can be very simple, influenced Frank Lloyd Wright when he went to Japan. And of course, he built the Imperial Hotel, which no longer exists. This is the Golden Temple in Kyoto. So they were wooden structures, which means that they may be 1,300 years old, but it also means that they've been rebuilt maybe 25 times. Not because Kyoto was bombed during the war, but because they burn. And you'll see why in a minute. So they have sliding doors, which expand your space. They have tatami floors, straw floors, and there's no furniture. So people sit on the floors, they sleep on futons, and the futons are stored at night. So it gives the illusion of spaciousness when actually the rooms are small and the buildings are very small. Now, Japanese architecture and Western architecture are very well melded into their modern architecture, but also the traditional is still very apparent. It's a castle, that's not a simple structure. These photographs that I had from way back, most of them didn't survive, but some of them did, and they're sort of distorted. But at that time we lived there was a rice field next to our house. We were in the middle of the city, but still there was a rice field. And we saw a lot of men peeing into the rice field every morning. That's sort of incidental. Fertilizer, yeah. But by the time we left, there was a house being constructed there. And a lot of houses look like this, sort of row houses. And when I came back in 2004, our house wasn't even there. Chestnuts are very nicely prized, and so there's a chestnut market. Soft drinks are everywhere. This is what these women are wearing is a part of Japanese folk art. All these little things that they're selling, beautiful chopsticks and chopstick holders and all these things, their bonnets are considered part of Japanese folk art. That's what Mingei means, Japanese. Japanese for folk art. This is all Japanese folk art. On different surfaces. This is on wood, painted. Quite charming, sometimes very whimsical, like him. You could just do an hour on Japanese folk art. It's so interesting. This, I think, is the emperor and empress when they were young, when I was young. So the current emperor is Akito, who's been on the chrysanthemum throne since he was enthroned after his father, the Emperor Showa Hirohito. That was the emperor, the American occupation allowed the emperor to continue on his throne, even though he started the war. It was a very smart move. The role of the Emperor of Japan has been historically alternated between a largely ceremonial, symbolic role, which is what he had after the war, and that of an actual imperial ruler, which is what he had before the war. This is their wedding. I can assure you she has not been to the bathroom.
The empress is usually chosen from the ordinary citizens of Japan, the royal family.
The empress is usually chosen from the ordinary citizens of Japan, not the royal family.
Yeah.
That's why I remember something about her being a very well-educated woman, but a commoner.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So, as I said, we would go to festivals every weekend, almost every weekend, and they're very elaborate. Arlene said that in the Festival of the Ages, the costumes were kept by the families. I assume these costumes were rented, but I don't know. It might be a family tradition. Considering how small the houses are, it's amazing that anything was kept. They have to store the kimonos, they have to store the futons, and there's hardly any storage space at all.
There's a lot of storage space under the floor.
Under the floor. Okay, storage space under the floor, thank you. Somehow we didn't have that in our house, but maybe we missed it. So what did we do there? So I had to threaten, cajole, whatever the words are, persuade my husband to go there for a year. He was a scientist and was just building up his laboratory at Emory University, but he managed to get a National Science Foundation fellowship to study at Kyoto University, which is the #2 university. The universities are ranked. You know, we know that there are prestigious universities in the United States, but it's nothing like the prestige that is accorded to these different universities. So, Kyodai, it's called, is #2 university, and he worked with a Japanese man. Many Japanese have very fine motor skills, and my husband was a clinical pharmacologist. They studied the infusion of a rabbit embryo's heart by all these different drugs that they were studying. Minute microscopic patient work, also characteristic of their art forms. My son was 15. I had my best friend there. We became best friends, was a psychologist at Kyoto Institute of Technology. And I had written to all the psychologists in Kyoto, but he was the only one I heard from because I found out later none of the others could actually speak English. And he got his PhD from Columbia, but still had a lot of trouble with English. But he wrote me back and said that I could have an office at Kyoto Institute of Technology because I could take the place of one of the teachers who was studying in America that year. And that's what I did, and I did research there. I didn't do any teaching because although Japanese have 8 years of English, they don't understand anything. Excuse me if anybody's offended by that, but at least it was true when I was there. Could read anything. Perfect English, could read, write English, but speak English, no. So my next door office mate, he also taught English there. I mean, I didn't teach English. We got beyond good morning, there was no conversation. Fortunately, there was a group of faculty members there who did speak English and who were extremely gracious and helpful in showing us around. That was really a wonderful thing. And they became very good friends. One woman who was on the faculty, I loved her. They were both, and one man, I loved him too. He was an expert in kabuki and no theater. Spoke 3 languages. These people are so amazingly cultured. Amazing. So I really enjoyed my time at Kyoto Institute of Technology. So my son, 15, commuted to Kobe every day, not every day, once a week, to the Canadian Academy. And my daughter, 13, went to the Kyoto International School. And both of these schools were started by missionaries. That year I met more missionaries and missionary children than I have ever heard of in my life. Missionaries love living in Japan. Their children are born in Japan. They speak perfect Japanese. They convert a lot of people to Christianity, who are also Buddhists, who are also Shinto. And they get credit for that, so they can stay there. The best part of it is they teach English. And if you learn English in a missionary school, maybe by reading the Bible, you have the best shot at learning English. Because learning English in school, as you saw from that alphabet, well, you didn't see, I didn't explain it to you, but every word is syllable. So it's ko, ka, ki, ke, ku. And you have to put all those syllables into your language, which doesn't translate very well into English. But the missionaries do teach very good English. So I was an advisor to the English-speaking society at Kyoto Institute of Technology, which was very interesting and a lot of fun. And I mistakenly took them to see Macbeth Who was that? Anyway, the British Council had movies all the time in English. Of course, they didn't understand word one. So we went back to my house for a discussion, and there was no discussion because they didn't understand it at all. It's too bad, though. So I did research on the Japanese perception of black and white. This was during the Civil Rights era. I was professor at Morehouse College at that time, and the study of black and white was very interesting to me. And especially in Japan, I did a number of studies that were quite interesting. I could talk about them later, but there's just not time to talk about everything. I also studied Japanese. I did that for 6 months until finally I was spending so much time on that. When it got to the honorifics, so if you're addressing somebody who's older than you, a woman, or somebody of higher or lower status, your language changes. At that point, I said, that's enough. I'm just a foreigner here, and I don't know anything, so I'm just going to skip that part, which gave me a lot more time because that Japanese course was very difficult. And there were only maybe 10 of us in the class from all over the world, so we didn't all speak English. But it was very hard to keep up with everybody, and if you didn't keep up, the whole class lagged behind. So it was a lot of work. And then there was this wonderful UNESCO course in 4 parts, religion, geography, literature, and culture, with 4 different professors. It was wonderful. And I also practiced Zen Buddhism, which I had learned to practice before I left. And then we went to the festivals on the weekend, and we went hiking in the mountains. So these are, retirement age, I think, is 55 in Japan. So a lot of men have nothing to do after they retire, and I think these festivals keep them entertained. They're Shinto festivals. These are Shinto hats that Shinto priests wear, but these are men in festivals. Very elaborate. Kids in festivals who are wearing masks. Horses in festivals. These are all different festivals. I don't remember what they were. Militaristic festivals. At night, little villages would have festivals. And invariably, there would be torches and fires. And these villages were made of wood. As a psychologist, there's such a thing as counterphobic behavior when you do exactly the opposite of what you're terribly scared of. I mean, you do what you're scared of. That's what this looked like. The chances of these villages burning down was very, very high, and everybody had these torches. This is a torch being set on fire. It scared me. I was terrified. As we wandered around Japan and Kyoto, we were often the center of attraction because we were gaijin. Gaijin means outside people or foreigners. And little kids, before they could hardly walk, could point at us and say, gaijin, gaijin. It's very embedded in the Japanese tradition that gaijin means, gai means outside, jin means person. That's the other thing about the Japanese language. Everything means something.
Barbarian. Gaijin barbarian.
Gaijin literally means outside person. Your connotation, barbarian, maybe. The last lecture, the English-speaking society asked me to give a final lecture before I left, and I gave it on the word gaijin, because it has a connotation of great deference and respect. Also has the connotation of barbarian. And it also, Japanese emulate gaijin. Models for kimonos are all blonde, blue-eyed women. So it's a very ambivalent relationship. I have a book called We Japanese. It's a very we-they kind of society, but very ambivalent toward gaijin. So anyway, we always attracted a crowd, which was very much fun. And people, can I practice my Japanese? And we were happy. Can I practice my English? We were happy to do that, but my kids' friends who were born in Japan got tired of that after they were 15 years old and people were still saying, "Can I practice my English on you?" That was sort of boring, but for us it was a lot of fun. So we would sometimes climb into the mountains or go through the woods around Kyoto, get something good to eat. Young people are under tremendous pressure to achieve in Japan and get into these top colleges, which are seriously ranked. So Tokyo University is numero uno, well, ichiban. And the Japanese suicide rate among young people is pretty high. And of course, that's what mothers do. They prepare the kids for college, so they take them to these after-school tutorial classes, starting at age 5. So we lived in Kyoto, and we had a very modest 2-story house that was considered the gaijin house. So people who taught at Kyoto University got this house, and the people before us were a Canadian family. And it was right near Mount Hiei, which was a good location, also near a trolley barn. So the trolleys went right past our house, very noisy, called denshas, the denshas, and next to that rice field that I showed you. So the denshas were very noisy. We would be sleeping on the floor under a futon, which was very heavy, and hearing the denshas at night. So the first week, I had these nightmares that I was being rolled over by steamrollers or trolleys or something. But you get used to it after a while. So we slept on futons. We did not have a car. It was not necessary. Public transportation is wonderful. Taxis are plentiful, inexpensive. This is back in those days. Anyway, trains, excellent, very good. We had a small refrigerator and 2 burners, so we had to cook everything on a, what is it?
Rotation.
Yes, whatever you said. So we had to shop every day, which was so much fun. My daughter and I would do the shopping, and people would know us. They'd go, get your tofu in one place, your fish in another place, your chicken in another place, your sake in another place, your vegetables in another place. And all the merchants would know us. So if she went by herself, it was, "Where's your mother?" And if I went by myself, "Where's your daughter?" And we had enough Japanese between the 2 of us so we could do shopping and have little conversations, which was great fun. And we were right close to shopping there. And the house came with this amazing English-speaking maid. She spoke better English than any professor that I met anywhere in the country. And she knew all the customs. And several times when I made hideous faux pas, just give you an example, my Zen teacher, long story short, died, and I went to see his wife after his death, and I presented her with a beautiful envelope, gold red envelope with money in it, because he had never taken any money. And I came back and told my maid, and she said, "What was the color of the envelope?" And I told her,
Oh, God.
"Wrong color. That was birthday or life." Or, you know about us,
White.
right, Jim?
White.
Yeah, white. Yeah, and I did that kind of stuff all the time. And if I told her about it, then she would correct me, but it was usually too late. And then if we had guests who would come to the front gate, she would, if she was there, she only came once a week, and she would talk to them in Japanese, find out who they were. We had some very interesting guests, including 2 neighbors of mine, 2 women who wanted me to teach them English, which I did. Long, long story there, too. We would always pick up these young men. I assumed they were interested in my daughter, I don't know. So we picked him up at the sumo wrestling, I'll show you in a minute. And he would come over fairly often. Strange young guy. I don't know what my daughter's doing, they're showing him pictures or something. And somebody had given us this lovely doll.
Mhm.
To decorate the house, I put these bamboo curtains on the inside. The Japanese thought that was absolutely gross. My maid informed me that those curtains go on the outside, not the inside. I thought they were very pretty. So this is some of the mountainous area around our house even. Beautiful places. This is a little village. We would visit these little villages. So, as I said, the mountains cover over 75% of the land's surface. There are 25 mountains with peaks over 9,000 feet, which is nothing compared to what Denver has, but the highest is Mount Fuji. Japan has 285 volcanoes, some of which are active. 20 are active. Earthquakes occur continually. It didn't occur while we were there, fortunately. An average of 1,500 minor shocks per year. And the Kanto earthquake in 1923 was one of the world's largest natural disasters, where 99,000 people died. 99,000 people. So plains are very few in Japan and small, and cover only about 29% of the total land. And most of them are located along the sea coast where most people live. This is a big treat. You could sit on a raft in a river and cold buckwheat noodles, soba, would be served to you. That was such fun. I think my husband was taking the picture. You've heard the expression, if you go into a Japanese restaurant, irashaimase, that's classic welcome. If they don't tell you irashaimase, you should get a refund. That's what they're supposed to say to you. And this is a ryokan where we stayed. Ryokan is a guest house, typical Japanese. Tea ceremony, of course, is one of the arts that young women learn. So this is sumo. I somehow fell in love with sumo wrestling. I found it so interesting. And I would watch it on television every opportunity I had. And of course my tutors were my colleagues at Kyoto Institute of Technology that would tell me about it. And one of them actually took us there to Osaka to see a sumo match. It's very colorful. It's very Shinto, the decorations, the rituals. Of course, the men are gross. They eat huge amounts. So the winner is either the first wrestler to force his opponent to step out of the ring, you'll see that in a minute, or the first wrestler to force his opponent to touch the ground with any part of the body other than the bottom of his feet. Matches consist of a single round and may last only a few seconds. I'll show you. Very ceremonial. Before each match goes on about 10 minutes of this ritual, pacing back and forth, throwing salt at each other, also a Shinto ritual. The winner.
World Series.
They do, not a World Series, but they have an international series. Not the whole world participates, but Hawaii does, I think. In fact, the champion the year we were there was a Hawaiian sumo wrestler. Hawaiian Japanese. Okay, so they have, obviously, they're huge, but that doesn't determine who wins. Often a smaller wrestler can outdo a bigger one. Let me go to the
What's their life expectancy?
good question. I don't know whether they're included in those life expectancy rates that I showed you. Here we go. I know he's built better than most of us. See, he's out. The littler guy got him out. You see a lot of rear ends here. And I'm not showing you all the ritual that goes on between these matches. The matches only take a few seconds. Oh, see, got rid of him fast. And he's dressed in a Shinto priest outfit, the referee. This is a long one. Short one. That's it. That's the whole match. I'm going to stop now, but on this tape is a very long one, maybe 50 seconds. Is this the one? No. No, that got him fast. I'm going to skip this. So that's sumo wrestling. This is my husband trying to be a sumo wrestler. This is where we picked up that young man that liked my daughter or something. So again, back to karate and karate. Again, these precepts, which I think are amazing. It's not a blood sport. He is human, so am I. It is an imitation of self-limitations. I can't read. If I cannot accomplish, whereas others can, discard this limitation. Discard this limitation. If he practices 3 times, I must practice 5 times. If he practices 5 times, then I will practice 7 or 10 times. Do not turn to others for help. Mashiach Buddha, pay your respects to the Buddha, to the gods and Buddha, but never rely on them. Earnestly cultivate your mind as well as your body and believe in yourself. Karate may be referred to as the conflict within yourself or a lifelong narrative, a marathon race, which can only be won through your own creative efforts. Isn't that amazing? I think this is what the Japanese, these are words that Japanese live by. These are just random pictures from different places. There's, in the villages, a lot of these thatched huts. Roofs have grass growing on them. Tories are very everywhere. My husband walked from our house to Kyoto University. A beautiful walk with deer and shrines. And when you get to Kyoto University, it looks horrible. A lot of graffiti, a lot of people shouting into microphones. Amazingly ugly place. So Buddhism has been practiced there since 552 AD. It came from Korea, began in India. And people say it's moving to the West and will eventually get here, which it has gotten here. It's a major influence on Japanese culture, though it, in Buddhism, material things are not to be worshipped. They're transient things. They're illusions. Of course, that's not the Japanese way of life. Japanese treasure material things. The more expensive, the better. So, again, another paradox. Only 35% of Japanese identify as Buddhists. The temples are used for burials, for funerals, and for weddings. That's not even true. But very, very rarely. I was lucky enough to make a contact through Alan Watts with a Zen Buddhist priest and his wife in a Japanese temple. And so I was able to practice Zen Buddhism there. And he and other Zen priests I would learn Zen Buddhism from. So there's at least 4 different kinds of Buddhism. Zen being more like Quaker and Pure Land being more like Catholicism in terms of its rituals and its fanciness and its attachments. And some of these more ritualistic forms of Buddhism see Buddha as a deity, but he was not a deity. He was a plain guy who lived a normal life, died a normal death. He was not crucified. There are not statues of him. He's not bleeding. There's not nails in his... It's very nice to go into a Buddhist temple. Yeah, he lived a very normal life after he sought the secret of life. Buddhist priests are not celibate. And as I said, you can be a Buddhist, Shinto, and a Christian at the same time. No problem.
How about Muslims? You see Muslims?
I don't know anything about Muslims in Japan.
Is it all around?
They're all around, I'm sure they are. Here's some temple architecture. This might be Kamakura, I'm not sure. So Buddhism is a non-theistic religion or philosophy. It encompasses a variety of traditions, beliefs, and spiritual practices, largely based on the teachings attributed to Gautama Buddha. And Buddha simply means the awakened one. That wasn't his name. So Buddhism is a religion to about 300 million people around the world. This Buddha of Kamakura is the largest one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like him. He's ugly. But at the same time, the Buddhist tradition is the military tradition. So there's a samurai warrior. And it's very interesting. The companies train their employees, their top employees, in Buddhism, and they go for a retreat, for maybe a week-long retreat, to learn the art of war and Buddhism at the same time. And one thing that happens is, if you're in a sword fight with somebody, and you're a Buddhist, you are no longer attached to life. Attachment goes in Buddhism. You learn not to be attached to people, to experiences, to things, and to life. I found that very helpful because I was going up in these cable cars, I was scared to death. And I just turned on my Zen Buddhism and I said, hey, it's only life. So when a company employee goes to a Buddhist workshop, they learn the secrets of attachment or non-attachment. So they're much better loyal workers than if they hadn't learned Buddhism. And a lot of the Buddhist priests and a lot of the Buddhist temples are kept alive by corporations who train their employees that way. Another little paradox. So Shinto is the ethnic religion of the people of Japan. It's sort of a nature religion, defined as an action-centered religion focused on ritual practices to be carried out diligently. You saw the rituals of the souls of dead insects. And to establish a connection between present-day Japan and its ancient past, which is why these children are dressed like this, which is why all those men were dressed like ancient warriors, priests. Very big in Japan. Here we have more people who are half naked and about to set fire to this torch. There he is. And these are young taiko drummers. Taiko is another wonderful musical tradition in Japan. More festivals. She's walking her son. And he's about to set fire to these pine boughs. Notice the wooden structure here. There it is. These are not just one festival, obviously, over a course of a year that we went to see all these festivals. This is a gourd that he's blowing into. Shofar, maybe. The cemeteries were beautiful. It's only ashes that are buried here, which means, cremation is mandatory because there's so little space, which means you can have my friend Mr. Akita's teacher died right before I came there. I was hoping to study with him, Koji Sato. And we went to his memorial service, and some of his ashes were buried in Kyoto and some in northern Japan where he was born. So you can do whatever you want to with your ashes. Oh, you could see that cemetery is very crowded like the country is. Here we are having a little picnic and attracting a lot of attention, including deer. We had deer around our house.
Ice cream?
I think he's eating ice cream, yes. Very tame. I don't know why these guys are so dressed up. They could be, no, they're not missionaries, no. There are Mormon missionaries in Japan, quite astonishing, because they have to learn Japan reading, writing, speaking Japanese before they go. We came across some who were writing these big signs in Japanese in beautiful calligraphy. Very impressive.
Are they Japanese?
No, they're Mormon Americans on missions. Here we are having a meal. This is in our room. We were put up in a lot of fancy hotels because my husband was considered to be very important. And of course we stayed in a lot of hotels, and then we got served in our room. In fact, there were so many servants lurking around, you had to go behind a screen to get dressed and undressed because they were always waiting on you hand and foot. This is how I looked as a brunette. My son, this was during the Beatles era, so he now has very short gray hair. And, well, this was not as common as it would nice to have been, but while you're out there in the river eating noodles, these little boats come around. This is a raked garden. This is such a carefully tended garden. It's like all bonsai here. So, No Theater. Has anybody seen No Theater? Again, one of the great subtleties of the world, because people wear masks, albeit different masks. But the way the head is turned, you can see whether the person is sad or happy just by the shadows on the mask. It's an extremely subtle form of theater. It goes on and on and on. And it's been going on since the 14th century. So in between the plays are kyogen, which is comedy, I'll show you that. And the No plays are based on traditional literature, usually with a supernatural being. These guys, I don't know who these are. I'll go back to the theater in a minute, but we were there when the cherry blossoms happened. Sakura is cherry blossom, Sakura festival. And so we went and sat under the trees. And it's a very fleeting situation. And they would tell you in the newspaper, on the radio, where the best cherry blossoms are, and you would run to that area. Because the next day, when the winds were blowing, the cherry blossoms would be over in that area. And when the cherry blossoms were falling, it was like snowing. It was so beautiful and so fleeting. My pleasure. And this is not snow, of course. These are cherry blossoms. This is a very old slide. It was so much fun. People were drinking sake like it was going out of style. People would come from all over the place. There was a lot of cross-dressing, a lot of sake, a lot of hospitality. We would be offered people's lunch, their sake, of course, because we were gaijin too. These are cross-dressed people. Him playing the shamisen. So wonderful. It's so wonderful. Here's, we picked up another young man here. Anyway, that was Cherry Blossom Festival, and it made me appreciate bamboo copse. If you go to a bamboo forest, it's always green, it's always calm, it's always stable, and it retains the roots because the roots spread out so much. It's the best place to be during an earthquake. And after the franticness and the intense beauty of the Cherry Blossom Festival, I sort of ran to the bamboo forest and just sat there because it was so calm and so eternal in a way. So we went to a lot of musical concerts. This is shamisen concert. Shamisen and shakuhachi were my favorite instruments. Shakuhachi means 8 hachis, which is a measurement, an old measurement. I first heard it when I was wandering around Kyoto, and I heard this haunting music in a temple and tracked it down to this shakuhachi player. Beautiful instrument. So is the shamisen. Archery is another martial art in Japan. And I don't know how many of you ever heard of or read Zen and the Art of Archery. Anybody? It's a very interesting book written by this German philosopher who studied both Zen Buddhism and archery. And in that book, he tells you how to use the principles of Zen Buddhism, or Buddhism, to become a good archer. And a lot of that depends on attachment. As if you're very attached to hitting the target, very attached to winning, you don't do nearly as well as if you drop the attachment and just sort of let it flow. It's a very interesting book. Again, not because of the martial art itself, but because of the philosophy behind it. Food. We eat a lot of food. But small portions. They're all small portions. This was meat, which we hardly ever ate, but the Japanese loved to entertain us by taking to places where they could eat meat. Japanese did not die of coronary artery disease until they started eating all this meat. We went to Hokkaido for the snow festival. I have to say that in our little house in Kyoto, we were always cold in the winter. It was very humid. We had little space heaters, which we couldn't use at night because if they overturned, the whole place would go on fire. So we had these futons on top of us if we had to go to the bathroom. Fortunately, the toilet seats were heated, but still you had to go down these cold steps. And we were never warm in our house. But we were very warm. We went to Hokkaido because we had a very nice hotel in Sapporo. And it was heated. And although it was snowing and it was cold, it was not humid. And the underground in Sapporo are all these shops and restaurants and a whole civilization underground, and they're all heated. Unlike in China where nothing is heated. But so it was very much fun to go to the snow festival. Here it is snowing, and here's a few people we picked up along the way. They built these enormous temples and castles out of snow. Apparently nothing like in Harbin in northern China and the Russian border, which also has a snow festival. It's supposed to be fantastic. I was there this summer, which I loved Harbin, but no snow festival, of course. Oh, my kids thought this was great. Then we went on some boats. This is a boat